President Trump said Governor Walz called him requesting cooperation in Minnesota. That's after Trump announced he'll send border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota. Joining us to discuss is Simon Hankinson, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Border Security and Immigration Center. Simon, good afternoon. First, can we get your reaction to this call between President Trump and Governor Walz? The president said Walz is happy that Homan is on his way. What do you think?
It seems a little difficult to believe that Governor Walz would be happy to have anybody from ICE in his state, as he's been so hostile to any federal law enforcement from the beginning. And it's pretty clear that there's no love lost between him and President Trump.
So the White House said that Homan will be managing ICE operations on the ground in Minnesota to continue arresting illegal aliens. Why do you think President Trump is sending Homan there now? And is there a signal that this is potentially sending?
Well, I mean, look, Tom is an extraordinary professional, and he's going to be masterful in terms of his direction of that field of activity. That's for sure. So if Trump wants to send a message that he wants the safest, most professional, most experienced pair of hands there in Minnesota, where things have frankly gotten a little out of hand, then I think that's the message that sending Tom would send. Obviously, he's the chief of that operation, is his border czar, an experienced border patrol agent. He himself has been in many a situation, the risky situation, and is a consummate professional. Another message might be that the Trump administration is not simply going to back down because they're confronted with incredibly well-organized activists, hostile politicians, local law enforcement who are not cooperating, and because there have been now two very preventable and avoidable, but also sad and depressing losses of life.
So, Simon, you said Homan has similar experience in the past in risky situations. So how do you think could having Homan there benefit law enforcement operations?
Well, I just think, anytime you have a difficult situation, whether it be, a local law enforcement problem like a hostage taking or a bank robbery, whatever, you send your best guy. You send the one who's got the most experience, who's the most trusted by the rank and file. And I'm not saying that the people who are there now are not experienced and trusted and doing a good job. I'm just saying that Tom is at the top of that pyramid, and having him there would be, I think, a positive influence on all concerned.
So in addition to that, Homan will also coordinate investigations into fraud in Minnesota. What about that? What could he bring to these cases? Because President Trump has said the fraud is partially responsible for the protests.
Well, I mean, they're connected, aren't they? And I think to some degree, the governor and the mayor are trying to divert attention away from the fraud emanating from basically the Somali community in Minneapolis. And Homeland Security would be involved in that for sure, because the investigation is into not just massive welfare fraud, which I guess would be the responsibility of Health and Human Services or Treasury, but also in immigration fraud. I've worked overseas in many countries, and the level of immigration fraud in Somalia or from Somalis is particularly high. It's up there with other very high fraud posts. And all of these things are deeply interconnected. If you're looking at money that's being sent out of the country as well, that's coming from these high profit fraud, transportation, childcare, home health care, and other scams, if some of that money is going to Al-Shabaab and funding terrorism, then that would be another concern of the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, Simon, can we also get your comments on the tensions between protesters and ICE officers, ICE agents? The CEOs of Minneapolis-based companies are urging de-escalation. That's more than 60 of them, including, Best Buy, Target, 3M. They're calling on local, state, and federal officials to work together following the fatal shooting of a 37-year-old man by Border Patrol agent. What are your thoughts on that? How do you de-escalate?
That's a really good question. I wish these companies had weighed in maybe a little earlier before two people got themselves into such a situation that they ended up getting killed. And look, we'll have results of these investigations and exactly what happened, and whether individual officers could have done something different at a particular time. But the problem is you're assembling ingredients here that are going to result in people getting injured or killed. If the Minneapolis city authorities would hand over wanted convicted criminal aliens or aliens who have a warrant that needs to be taken up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement so that they can have their due process and then at the end of it either be deported or not, then all of this could be avoided. But the city is kind of ground zero for the far left American politics. It's Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, kind of the top three that come to mind. And there are professional activists there who are well-funded and well-organized. We're seeing more and more of that coming out now by mostly private reporters, but I think the government and the Department of Justice will be digging into it. They've decided this is the battleground. This is where they're going to make their stand against all federal law enforcement of immigration laws. And so this is kind of a make or break deal for them, but it's also an important line to hold for the Trump administration.
Okay, just one last question, Simon. You said if officials cooperated a bit more, things could be avoided. How big of a role would you say state and local leaders play in reducing tensions?
I would say they play a huge role, 80%. I mean, look at it. What other city have you heard of this happening in? You've had some riots in Los Angeles earlier in the year, or last year rather, in June. You had some issues in Portland, a few other places where you've had some violence, some rocks thrown, some demonstrations, not good things. There were even some agents shot at in Texas. But Minneapolis is the one place where this is happening on a regular, organized basis. This is not just a few, mothers and strollers on a Sunday afternoon holding up signs. This is a professional activist corps surrounded by some, local neighborhood kind of willing participants who are on the same ideological side, but nowhere near as well organized. And it's a campaign. It's just like after the death of George Floyd, you didn't just have one riot where people exploded in anger. You had weeks of highly organized rioting and property destruction to achieve a political goal. And that's what you're seeing in Minneapolis. This is a campaign being waged with a deliberate political goal in mind.
Yeah, I mean, Trump administration officials like Vice President J.D. Vance have also echoed what you said just now, that this is only happening in Minnesota. And we have to question why that is. Well, thank you for your time today, Simon. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you.